It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. We have got a packed program for you today, so please hit that share button and let's get educated. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. This week, MyPillow is offering their Egyptian cotton Giza Dream Sheets for just $40. That's a 60% savings when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. When you access that code and buy something nice at a cheap price from MyPillow, you're helping them and you're helping us. Okay, Dave, today we start with an absolutely wild video that shows just how private schools across the country are overtly training teachers to expose your kids as young as 4 and even 3-year-olds to explicit sexual content in the classroom without parents having the faintest clue.
So we talk about on this show every single day, public schools, and how bad they are. But pay attention, because this is for the private, independent schools. And this whole secrecy and training that they're putting out, it was done by the National Association of Independent Schools, the NAIS. So mom and dad, if you're like, well, my kid doesn't go to a public school, so obviously they're getting a better education. Yeah, if they want to have this queer, inclusive, everything is not about actual education but sexualization, then yes, they are getting such an education.
When Katie talks about private, she absolutely means Christian schools too. You think your Catholic school, diocesan Catholic schools aren't doing this? You think your Lutheran Methodist schools? Not all of them, but high numbers of them are adopting this. It's a weird sickness in America over the last 20 years. Rather than be Christian private schools that give a higher level of education with faith at the center, our Christian schools have dropped all that in pursuit of being just like the public schools. Take a look at these private schools at this first video.
With the younger children starting in pre-K, we talk about their bodies, about the parts that they were born with, about penises and vaginas and whether that makes somebody a boy or a girl, but also their feelings. What do they feel like inside? Do they feel like a boy or a girl? What does their head say? Does their head and their heart and their body match up?
This is staggering. Yeah, this is really staggering.
Oh, head
ask a child to do. You might as well ask a child to do that, a 3-year-old. You're actually, first of all, I love how they ignore souls, by the way. These are private schools, many of them Christian schools. This is the heart and the mind, right? This has nothing to do with spirituality or the soul. And what do you think you're going to get when you ask a 3-year-old, what does she feel inside? Do you feel that your heart and your head are in alignment with your vagina and your penis? I mean, these are questions that are unanswerable to children. And the clinical way this idiot teacher approaches this is what we start doing at kids as young as 3.
Yeah, and it gets worse because, as we know, those people who are being trained up to be the next generation of teachers for our children are already learning this and implementing in their classroom exactly what whoever originally came up with this want them to teach. And so here's an example of a first-year teacher who said, oops, didn't think something was going the way it should, and then because she thinks her school is progressive, oh, it's okay. So here's how our teachers are being taught to teach.
I'm going to share one of my missteps. When I started my first year teaching with the health and wellness team, I had been given a title to a book, so I went to our school library to pull it. And I pulled it thinking I had the right one. I didn't. And I read through, I'm like, this is really progressive stuff. But it was my first year, so I'm like, okay, we're just super progressive. So I went in there guns blazing, and I just went for it. And I ended up talking about the vulva and the labia with pre-cares, and it was just one of those moments, everybody's looking in horror, and I'm like, oh no, I made a really big mistake. And I share that with you because it's not perfect, right? It's a practice. So be kind to yourselves when you're like delving into this stuff.
So be kind to yourself when you over-sexualize the classroom. When you bring Hustler magazine into second grade as a school prop, don't take it too hard if that was the wrong thing to do. And did you hear, Mom and Dad? where as we started at the beginning, she's part of the school's health and wellness team, social, emotional learning, health and wellness. This is being taught to your kids in every grade, in every subject. It has nothing to do with the curriculum. So if you wanted to find out what's going on in the curriculum for math or science or English, you're not going to see this. You have to find a way to see what the curriculum is for your health and welfare program, which has become ubiquitous across all grades and across all ages, endlessly repeating the same things.
And you saw that she was, the pre-K, because it's not just our high schoolers learning about sexuality. It's our middle schoolers, it's our elementary, it's our youngest of students. But, if you're going to start when they're in pre-K, then you have to continue on. And so then the educator educating the teachers, supposedly, then goes on to talk about, well, what happens when they get, maybe first grade, second grade? Now what are they going to learn?
By second grade, we move on explicitly to gender identity and talk about it again in terms of your head and your heart and your body parts matching up. And does that work for you? What happens if it doesn't? What are the other parts of you that have to do with your gender identity, and what are the parts of you that don't? And the kids draw wonderful self-portraits again, but dealing with all aspects of their identity, including specifically their gender identity.
That really should bother you. This is for the second time. Again, we have them draw pictures of themselves. What do you think those pictures are? All outside with clothes on a sunny day holding red balloons? No. They're being asked to draw a self-portrait related to their sex and their sexuality. So how do they see themselves? So if it's a little girl, right, does she draw herself with a penis or in boys' clothing? Again, now first, so pre-K, then you repeat it in first grade, you repeat it in second grade. It's not teaching. This is inculcating, this is forcing them to indoctrinate certain understandings before they even can assess them intellectually.
And because they are giving these self-portraits, that means they can see what little Johnny has over in his self-portrait, or Sally over there. And if Sally decides today that she wants to be a boy, and that whoever, Johnny, whatever name I feel like putting, if they want to be a girl, and then you're looking at yours and you're like, I'm a girl and I made a girl. Oh no, did I mess it up? Did I screw up? And that's how their heads get screwed. And that's why we need to have them not in these schools. Not
a single mention of parents here. It's as if the parents and what the parents want, or what the parents' religious or cultural or moral background is. This is our moral obligation to do this to your kids the minute you send them to pre-K.
It's my head and it's my heart.
Soulless bastards.
That's all it is. But hey, we're not going to leave you hanging with just going through second grade. We need to keep this ball rolling, not just ball.
Watch
vagina
now,
too.
Right when they're getting to the age where they can begin to abstractly understand this, watch how everything that's been built in comes right back around on them.
Starting in fifth grade, we start using the words for that sex is what you were born with. It's external and internal genitalia. It's hormones and chromosomes. That's something that you can only change with a whole lot of effort. Gender identity is how you feel inside. It's what you feel like in your heart and in your head, just like the language that we used when they were younger, but it's something personal. It's something that's unique to you. It's something that you get to decide. Gender expression is what you share with the world, how you dress, how you act, what you're interested in, what you put out there. And that, again, is your choice. It's something that you can change from day to day. It's completely up to you. Sexual orientation is who you are emotionally and physically attracted to. And so that's how we talk about it with the kids and introduce them to it. Fifth grade is our big year. It's not that all of them aren't, but we do the reproductive system and puberty. We talk about gender identity specifically with the gender unicorn, this time talking about things as a continuum. For gender identity and expression, sex assigned at birth, who you're physically attracted to and who you're emotionally attracted to. So all those aspects of gender identity and sexuality. And we do read a book. The kids are like, you're reading us a storybook? We're in fifth grade. But it does a lovely job of talking about gender identity and opens up a wonderful conversation.
By the time your children are in fifth grade, think about this. They've had age 3, age 4, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, 8 years if they go to preschool. 8 years by the time they're in fifth grade of this relentless garbage. And I love what she said at the beginning. Sex is what you're born with. That's really it's hard to change. It takes a lot of work to change it. Show me, madam, how anybody has successfully in the history of the world changed their sex. I'll go along with your whole stupid anti-science program if you can give me one example how anybody in the history of the world eradicated their biological sex. We'll wait because you got no answer. But you're going to teach this to 5-year-olds as if it's the honest to God's truth, and if they just work a little harder at your stupid left-wing program, they'll get rid of their biological sex too.
Are you a fan of the show? Consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation of $99 a year keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to pledge your support and receive our signature tumbler as a token of our appreciation. We've got much more to come. Stay with us.
Now, we all know about the Scholastic Corporation, Scholastic Press. Your kids maybe came home from school, you came home from school, had your little Scholastic newsletter, the order form, and you're like, wow, it's book time.
I swear to God, I remember in 1976 and 77, 78, on late March, early April days when it was warm out and late in the afternoon, the teachers would pass out, because they didn't want to teach. They passed out the Scholastic magazines, and I remember sitting there from like 1:30 to 3 reading Scholastic magazine, and then it was full of Charlie Brown and Snoopy cartoons.
Well,
I would sit there for hours reading Charlie Brown, which, might be a waste of education, but it's infinitely more wholesome and useful than what they're doing now.
Well, then, now we know how he spent his childhood. Well, my 2-year-old is even getting these Scholastic Press book order forms where it's like, oh, you can get 3 books for the price of 2. And it's like, ooh, let's, order books. And as a child of a librarian, again, I love ordering books or getting new books. However, the indoctrination that we have happening in our schools, as we just saw, is happening in all of the literature, or what used to be literature, because now it's just all about, a boy being a girl and a girl being a boy. And so Scholastic Press is pushing all the young kids towards all this woke type literature. And sometimes they're either, they even have themes, like I just said, like, ooh, you could get 3 books all about sexuality or critical race theory or LGBTQ. And basically a lot of it's just general anti-Americanism. So, here's to China. And so we have an actual good story actually coming out of this, because we have a group called Heroes of Liberty, and we've talked about them before when they formed, but it's Heroes of Liberty. The editor and the board member, Bethany Mandel, spoke about in a little video they had explaining what is happening. So take a look.
If it weren't enough that the woke movement controls our children's education in school, it has also found a devious way to infiltrate our homes. This is how the system works. Scholastic Press, the world's biggest publisher of children's books, is a billion-dollar octopus. This once wholesome publisher has become a woke powerhouse, a woktopus, that promotes gender fluidity, LGBTQ, CRT, anti-Americanism, and even sex in children's books, while abandoning the most basic American values of freedom, family, self-reliance, and love of our country. The woktopus uses the authority of teachers to actively promote their books to children when parents are not around. The line between school programming and cultural brainwashing is intentionally blurred to manipulate children and turn them into consumers of woke books in their own homes, under the radar of unsuspecting parents. This is how the homes of those who want to raise their children according to American values are infiltrated by anti-American, self-hating woke ideology.
Silly me, I thought the woktopus were all these hypocritical liberal men who couldn't keep their hands off all the women around them, like Harvey Weinstein, right? No, the woke octopus apparently is the educational publishing organization. And we talked a lot about this during Common Core when we were giving our Common Core talks, that the people who were really feeding this were the great big textbook publishing companies. There's a very limited market, and what ended up happening is you had companies like Macmillan, you had companies like, you could pretty much all the big ones are out, who are publishing these textbooks, making them more and more Common compliant. Now you're seeing, now that Common Core has been solidified across the country, now they're taking that next step that we told you was going to happen. You think the sexuality was bad under Common Core. We showed you how it got in there. We showed you the national sexuality standards. A lot of people didn't believe it. A lot of people say, oh, this is never going to happen. You guys are overreacting. But we knew full well that once the schools had decided that they were the real parents, not you, which is one of the main things that Common Core helps secure. The attitude that your children belong to the schools more than they belong to you, mom and dad. The next step was obvious. They were going to minimize the teaching of math and science and reading and literature and maximize their political, social, moral, and ethical influence over your kids to turn them into the exact same kind of kids they want them to be. Good little American-hating, godless progressives.
So if you watched that video and you said, yes, I agree with what is happening and we want something to change, Heroes of Liberty did put out a petition at stopwokebooks.com. And on that petition, it actually states that our children are being brainwashed by woke books in our homes. Once a wholesome book publisher, Scholastic, has turned into the woke-topus, as they said in the video. And then they're saying that parents should be free to choose the books and values by which they want to raise their children. And they also talk about how Scholastic Press, pretty much I think everyone took their little Scholastic Press order forms home and be like, Mom, buy me this book. But this is what Scholastic has done. They say in the petition how Scholastic Press uses influence to operate behind their parents' backs. Instead of convincing parents to buy the books, it goes straight to the kids and recruiting teachers as salespeople in most of America's schools through the book clubs and the book fairs. That Scholastic exploits the authority of teachers who prescribe books for our children when parents are not around. In this way, Scholastic intentionally blurs the lines between education and cultural brainwashing, turning our children into consumers of woke ideology.
And not surprising, Scholastic denies
They
this.
denied
and
it.
Sparkman, she did. Scholastic's vice president of corporate communications, quote, "The only agenda at Scholastic is to engage kids in a love of reading in partnership with schools and families. If your only interest, Scholastic, is to help kids fall in love with reading, why not put some of those Peanut comics back in? Why not have them read uplifting, wholesome moral stories? Why are you writing again and again and again about rape and incest and sex and sodomy? It's over, and you can't deny it. Your books are full of it." She goes on to say, the only agenda at Scholastic, well, the only real agenda is to make lots of money. The only agenda at Scholastic is to engage kids in love of reading in partnership with schools. Throughout our more than 100-year history, we're proud to have brought generations of books, magazines, and Scholastic Book Club and Fair Experience as part of that mission, right? And you do that all of the goodness of your heart. You're not in any way aligned with this radical leftist takeover. You've just decided, hey, somebody's got to sell the guns to the Nazis, right? The Nazis have taken over. Somebody's got to keep the trains running.
Today's show is sponsored by Clean Start Hand Sanitizer. For an odor-free foam hand sanitizer that lasts 2 hours and provides 19 refills, visit freedomproject.com/clean. That's KLEEN to order yours today.
You know, just when you thought that you could finally have your kids be free of those diaper masks. Nah, we're not going to do that. The Centers for Disease Control at the CDC have no plans to change their recommendation that all schools require masks for the children. This is coming according to an audio recording of a closed-door House Energy and Commerce Committee briefing that just happened. And the audio, we can't find the actual audio, but it was leaked by Reason. And so on the recording, supposedly, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky was heard saying the following: the CDC provides guidance. Our guidance currently is that masking should happen in all schools right now. And now the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations had hosted this briefing, and it took place virtually last week. Now, in attendance were, there you go, Rochelle Walensky, White House COVID-19 advisor, the one, the only, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The Fauci.
Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Dawn O'Connell. So you have the people who've been dictating exactly what's been happening for the past 2 years in a room, and they really don't have any plans
The
to let
people-
your kids breathe.
The people who've got it wrong dozens of times over the last couple of years
Are getting it wrong. Yeah, those people. And so Walensky did face a little backlash from it. We have Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers, who is the committee's ranking Republican member, actually challenged Walensky on the science. She should have just turned and looked at Dr. Anthony Fauci, the science. But McMorris Rogers basically said, why are you still mandating that our schools have this? And as she said, what we see in the U.S. is an outlier as it relates to the mask mandate for our children to go to school. The World Health Organization, WHO, and UNICEF have both recommended against masking for kids under the age of 5 because it's going to, do more harm than good. For children ages 6 to 11, they think that we should be considering other factors like, learning and social development. I'm adding a little flavor, I'm sure she said it with that tone, though. My question today, my one question is, Dr. Walensky, will you commit to update your guidance by Friday to allow children in person without the burden of masks? Yeah, and Walensky's just kind of like, well, I will also say that guidance is just guidance. So, and all of these decisions, we've continued to say, have to be made at the local level. As cases come down dramatically, we have deferred our guidance to the local jurisdictions. And again, I think that's how she probably said it.
And of course, the following day, Walensky did not specifically mention school masking in her public remarks at the White House, though she did signal that the CDC intends to issue more flexible guidance on masking in general. So far, however, she has given no indication that any update to the guidance would apply to kids in schools. And even behind closed doors, she has reiterated the agency's position that all schools should have mask mandates. And the answer is why? We noticed just today, Boston got rid of its mask mandate everywhere else in the city except the schools. And you ask yourselves, why the schools? It's time for some real education. This week, we are showcasing our Battles of America series. We're very proud of this one. These short videos are designed to educate adults and children alike on some of the greatest battles in American history. Today, we take a look at the Battle of Lexington and Concord in 1775 and its significant importance to the Revolutionary War. I hope you enjoy as much as we do, and I hope you'll consider helping us fund these wonderful videos by joining the Patriot Club.
Battles of America, Lexington and Concord. Beginning in 1764, Great Britain passed several acts to raise more revenue from taxes on the American colonies. These acts, such as the Sugar Act, Stamp Act, and Townshend Acts, infuriated the colonies and inspired the phrase, "no taxation without representation." With the colonists' continued resistance to these acts, the British Parliament believed they had no choice but to declare the colonists in rebellion and sought to subdue them permanently. The plan was to arrest opposition leaders Samuel Adams and John Hancock in Lexington and end the militia by destroying their weapons and ammunition in Concord. On April 18, 1775, Dr. Joseph Warren, a prominent Boston physician, learned of the British plan. He sent riders William Dawes and Paul Revere to alert Adams and Hancock and the militia to hide their ammunition. Then, on the morning of April 19th, 700 British soldiers, led by Major John Pitcairn, marched to Lexington, where 77 waiting Minutemen faced them. Vastly outnumbered, the colonists' Captain Parker ordered the militia to disperse. Just then, a gunshot rang out which caused the British and the militia to begin fighting. To this day, no one knows who fired the first shot. When order was finally restored, 8 of the colonists lay dead, and 10 more were wounded. Only one redcoat had been harmed. The remaining members of the militia quickly fled the area. After the small triumph at Lexington, the British marched toward Concord. They encountered little resistance from the colonists at first, so they began to comb the entire town for the hidden stockpiles. They burned what few arms they found. Unbeknownst to the British, hundreds of militiamen were watching them from the other side of the North Bridge. When the colonists saw the fires, they mistakenly assumed their whole town was going to be burned as well, so they rushed to the North Bridge to attack the small company of British soldiers who were defending it. The British fired first, but retreated after the militiamen returned fire. This skirmish is what's referred to as the shot heard around the world, penned by Ralph Waldo Emerson in his poem Concord Hymn. The shot signified the beginning of the Revolutionary War. Unable to find any other arms, the rest of the British soldiers began to march back to Boston. The militiamen followed them and persistently shot at and harassed them all the way back to town. The news of these battles spread rapidly, and their success proved that the colonists could stand up to the most powerful army in the world. None of them could know that they had just embarked on a brutal 7-year journey to complete independence from Britain.
I want to take a moment now to thank our Patriot Club members who made those videos possible. Their financial support does provide the resources to bring these incredible stories to life for all to enjoy. And in fact, we do have many, many more battles to produce, because if you know your history, you know there's been a lot of battles and various wars, but we need your financial help to make them happen. So if you're not already a member of the Patriot Club, please consider joining with a $99 gift to help us continue producing our Battles of America series. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get started. Now, before we go, we want to show some love to our Patriot Club members, and today, that special shout-out is going to Arthur from Blacksburg, South Carolina. Arthur, thank you for supporting us.
And that wraps up this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and until next time, education, my friends, keep it